absolutely right. I mean, it's a slightly unusual experience of running a very small, or relatively small, charitable foundation in the UK, but one which is attached to a much larger, and it has to be said, quite dominant a charitable foundation in Portugal. And that, of course, influences my perspective. The other thing that influences my perspective, actually, and I was inspired by this by somebody I spoke to over breakfast. I wonder what Gulbenkian himself would think. And actually, I don't think he would have cared less about power. I think that what he did was he endowed a charitable foundation to exist in the interests of humanity after he died. And he would have wished that organisation to have exercised the power that it has to the maximum beneficial effect. And that's really my starting point. Rather than sort of talk just about power, I want to sort of talk about sort of some other prisms. And I actually think the most important prism for us to think about is about our performance and the way in which our practice influences our performance. So I want to talk about the sort of relationship between our purpose and our processes, the way in which we operate necessarily in a plural world. Stephen talks as though we operate in some sort of monolith, which I don't believe to be the case, and the way in which we operate in partnership with organisations and take participative approaches to engaging with those with whom we work. And I hugely welcome the work that has been done by my colleague from the Edge Fund on different ways in which we can consider that. So whilst I reject the premise that power is the big issue, I'm very happy and delighted to be able to have the opportunity of reflecting on some of the issues which it raises. I'm going to avoid mention of another P, which is plutocracy, which is Charles encouraged me to sort of go on about that, but I'll avoid that. So let's just start with sort of defining power. The definition I favour is one which says the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behaviour of others or the course of events. And some definitions major on sort of use of force, and others on more on influence. A sort of distinction between hard and soft power, which we're becoming familiar, or certainly those of us who've worked in international settings are becoming familiar with. And the privilege that we have as part of philanthropic organisations is to determine our strategies consistent with the wishes of our founders, our governing documents, and certainly within the UK with the tests set by the regulator, which ensure that we operate in the public interest. We can identify areas of interest. We can design our own operating models, the sorts of projects we support, the way in which we approach things, and we can also select projects. Now, I think this is the bit which is exaggerated, because, of course, in selecting one project, we're expressing a preference over the alternatives. But this is where I do part company with Stephen. From our perspective, we find it very much more effective to operate proactively rather than reactively. We avoid totally this sort of dance of deceit, I think Julia Rahman referred to it, which is the whole process of sitting down with applicants and sort of judging them. We're much more interested in engaging in a genuine partnership with organisations whom we bring together in a participative setting to identify the things that we share in common and the ways in which we can come together to address the problems which we feel exist in society. And so I don't think that it's really about whether we hold power. I think that there's a risk that we sort of delude ourselves if we think that power is in some way excessive. And I think that we should be deploying the power, if you want to call it that, to the benefit of those people who we exist to serve. We have a variety of different sorts of power. Some of it's convening power. Some of it is associated with the expertise we may have built up in a field. I think that we have a breadth of expertise compared to the depth which is enjoyed by those people with whom we work. So I think it's really about the purpose. I think the process needs to follow the purpose. And as I say, I worry about organisations which elevate application-driven processes above the beneficial purposes which should be at the heart of our operations, and who concern themselves by thinking that they act alone in society rather than in a plural ecology in which we all have voices, and we should be trying to release the voices of those who have less opportunity to express them.
Before you go, Andrew, can I just ask you what you feel about, because there is this very interesting case of the Gulbenkian Foundation in Portugal, whereas you agreed it is very dominant because it's huge compared to any other players. Do you think in those circumstances, does it have too much power in Portugal?
I think that, I think that things are different. I think scale matters, and I think that the way in which people perceive scale matters. The reality is that the Gulbenkian Foundation in Portugal, I mean, it has a perceived dominance. The reality is it spends about 100 million euros a year in an economy which is infinitely, hugely greater than that. Some of my colleagues have an exaggerated sense of their own power, and some of those with whom they work exaggerate that still. And that's the sort of dance of deceit which I talk about. And I actually think that this is about sort of beliefs and behaviours. I think there's absolutely. I think my colleagues believe they're doing the right thing. I accept that. But I think that their behaviours need to be moderated by the apparent dominance which they have. And I've always said that the larger you are, the greater the modesty you need to have when you're engaging with others.
Okay, thank you very much.